Welcome everyone to the first international showcase of a series of 4 focusing today on the asset management industry in Luxembourg. A little bit about our fantastic speakers' background. First on the scale, we have Robert G. Jarvis from Luxembourg for Finance, who advises its key stakeholders in proactive decision-making with regards to target markets, business development, and financial topics, as well as the strategic orientation to the agency and financial center in general. Robert has various special focus topics: Brexit, asset management, sustainable finance, and fintech, and provides in-depth insights on growth opportunities in these sectors within the European and North American markets. Robert is a regular speaker representing the Luxembourg Financial Center. Second, we have François Drasdick, who has almost 4 decades of experience in the fund industry. He joined ALFI in June 2009 and is currently the head of administration responsible for the smooth enrollment and the internal organization and administration. He's a program coordinator for ALFI's conferences, roadshows, and their digital fintech forum. Since January 2016, he's a member on the ALFI Management and Executive Committee and represents ALFI as a member on the ICT Luxembourg Board of Directors. Nicolas Gérard is Managing Director of the State Street Bank Luxembourg. He's currently responsible for the development of regulatory compliance and fund administration product EMEA, as well as various innovation activities covering fintech, regtech, cooperation, and emerging technologies. Nicola has 18 years of experience with State Street and was previously Deputy Head of Client Services Operations, covering fund accounting and custody with additional focus on asset pooling and State Street's digitization program. On the moderator side, we have our co-host and colleague Alex Panican, Head of Partnerships and Ecosystem Development at LHoFT. Prior to joining LHoFT, Alex taught marketing and strategy as a teaching associate at the University of Quebec in Montreal, and was a serial entrepreneur creating companies in the space of e-commerce and alike. At LHoFT, he's been traveling the world, connecting fintech entrepreneurs with the local ecosystem, and has been a master of ceremony interviewing thought leaders from all walks of life. Later during the Q&A, we will have Hugo Vautier, Director of Fund Administration at Finimo, Luxembourg, joining us to answer your specific questions. Without further ado, sirs, Alex, the screens is yours.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Awesome introduction. I mean, we have quite some experts today as panelists. And yes, I've traveled all over the world, but usually it's with Robert. So hello, dear panelists. Hello, everybody. So due to the COVID-19 problem that we all faced, most of our conferences abroad and nationally has been canceled. So we are bombarded with thousands of emails from fintech asking us questions about the financial industry in Luxembourg, how it is, how to work with the financial actors, how to set up a business. That's why we decided in Luxembourg for Finance and some of the association from the financial industry to set up a series of webinars to showcase the financial industry to the world, but also to answer your questions. So on this PC, I can hear somebody, I can know who, but so yes, without any further ado, let's start with our first experts. Robert, please, can you just showcase what's the asset management industry in Luxembourg?
Sure, thank you very much, Anthony. What an introduction. I feel like this is a boxing match coming up. And Alex, thank you very much as well. I'm here to briefly introduce the financial center as well as the asset management industry in Luxembourg. So what I do is that I help fintechs explain and understand what Luxembourg can offer. Then we'll go over what made Luxembourg one of the leading financial centers in the European Union. We're often ranked as number 2 or number 3. Now maybe post-Brexit, we climb up the ranks a little bit, but we're not happy about Brexit. Luxembourg is at the heart of the European Union. We're a founder of the European Union, located in between Belgium, France, and Germany, and this European aspect really shapes our industry. We're of course home to Schengen. This is a picture of Schengen to anyone who's not been there before, actually. And Schengen, you may know as the reason why you can travel around the European Union without sharing a passport, but it's also the reason why you can do business from one location in Europe to the rest of the European Union. This is actually Schengen. It's the Luxembourgish side. The other side is Germany, and a bit further down the road is France. What this has created, this European spirit, is one tolerant nation. We have 3 official languages, French, German, and Luxembourgish, but the business language is English. On average, a Luxembourgish citizen speaks over 3 languages, so almost 4 languages, which is an important part of what we can do as a financial sector. It's a very cosmopolitan country with around 50% of the population as foreigners, and that again helps us in our financial services. And this, if you're listening to my presentation, this is the only thing you really need to remember. This is a map by the IMF in 2016, but even if we were to update it today, it would look pretty similar. It's a world map that reshapes the size of each country according to the size of their cross-border financial activities. So that is cross-border finance. And as you can see, Luxembourg is bigger than France, bigger than Germany, bigger than Japan, and even bigger than China. Only perhaps the US and a bit of the UK would be bigger than Luxembourg. That's what we do. We do financial services across borders. This is the same kind of map, but this is focused on just on exports, not on imports. And as you can see again here, Luxembourg, the third biggest financial services exporter in the world. And why can we do this? Well, I'll start explaining on the next slide. It's because of the European single market, first of all, and that allows for cross-border trade. Luxembourg sits there in between other countries and allows you to trade with all of the 500 plus million consumers, all of the financial institutions, and even beyond. Luxembourg acts as a hub for businesses and for asset managers and for investment funds to do this cross-border activity. At the same time, it offers this in a country that is economically stable, politically stable, and social stability, large social cohesion. We have very little drama or politics as we might have in other countries or across the pond. Now, what our financial center, just finance, next slide. What our financial center specializes on is on 4 key industries. So that's the asset management industry, banking, insurance, and capital markets. I'm going to briefly cover each of them. And this for me is a little graphic I made for what Luxembourg is all about. So we have around 4.7 trillion euros of assets under management in Luxembourg investment vehicles. And these investments are collected by many people in the world who give their money to an asset manager who, in order to invest it in the long term. And Luxembourg collects this money and distributes this money in over 70 different countries. So that is what Luxembourg has become as a brand for, much like you would buy a German car for its stability, for its security, etc. You'd buy a Luxembourg investment product as a well-regulated, safe, and trusted vehicle. It makes sense for an asset manager to set up a vehicle in one location and with that capture investments from all over the world and then to invest it into projects, thereby again helping the real economy. The asset management industry is a way of financing stocks, financing governments, and giving money into the real economy. I think that's a very important aspect again now during the Corona crisis, is to see that finance can actually help, and finance does good. So yes, locally in Luxembourg, we've got over 4.7 trillion assets under management. That was pre-Corona crisis figures. Now it's a bit less, but that was because of the financial turbulence. There's around 500 asset managers in Luxembourg, and we're the global leader in cross-border investment funds. So that for fintechs means clients, asset management clients, banking clients, insurance clients, lots of international businesses. Yeah, as I said, the fund industry needs a lot of banking as well. And we have around 130 banks in Luxembourg. This is the geographic origin of some of the banks. For the fund services, which is an important sector, I think that's one of the largest industries in Luxembourg is the fund servicing, because everybody thinks that asset management is simply about investing. But actually, in a typical asset management value chain, only around 10% of the workforce is investment. All of the rest is behind the scenes. And the more countries you sell products into, the more services it needs. Because if you imagine one investment fund product being sold into 70 jurisdictions, that needs to be translated, it needs to be applicable to the regulations, be it in Hong Kong, be it in Chile, be it in Italy. So there's a lot of services behind the scenes in the asset management industry. We also have a burgeoning insurance industry where, again, we focus on cross-border insurance. I'm not going to go into much detail there. Next. Same with our capital markets. We focus on cross-border activities where we have international debt listed by governments as well as by large international corporations that use Luxembourg as a platform to see to list their products and able to gain visibility internationally. And I think this is already my last slide. And this is kind of where I'd like to focus on a bit longer. Here it's kind of examples of the type of clients that you as a fintech can find in Luxembourg. And you can see kind of the geographic origin of the actors in Luxembourg. We're not a local financial center, we're an international center. You can see all of the big names from Europe, all of the big names from America, South America a bit less, Middle East and Africa also a bit less, but a very large also Asian focus. We have the big Chinese banks that do business from Luxembourg, as well as the Japanese banks and asset managers, but also a lot of the fintechs. If you look closer, you'll see Alipay, you'll see Rakuten, etc. From Asia. And this again is what Luxembourg allows. And when I was mentioning this multilingualism in Luxembourg, that's the important part for many of these international financial institutions that come to Luxembourg, because here they find a stable country to do business in internationally, and they find the workforce that allows them to operate in one location. A workforce that speaks Italian, that speaks Chinese, that speaks English, that speaks German. So it makes sense for a business to set up their operations here and use it as a hub for the European Union. Finally, perhaps the asset management industry in Luxembourg is probably the most important sector of the financial industry. It employs around 15,000 people. The entire financial sector employs around 50,000 people. And it contributes greatly to the GDP as well as also to the tax revenues of Luxembourg. Because every single investment fund pays a taxe d'abonnement, which helps the government itself finance projects and finance the economy in Luxembourg. Now I'll pass you over to François Dresdick, and I think that after that we can maybe handle some questions in together. François, he is the guy at the ALFI, which is the Luxembourgish Fund Industry Association.
All right, so first let me start with ALFI. So to give you a little bit of an insight into who is ALFI and what does it represent. So the association has been created back in 1988. We are what you call a non-for-profit organization. We are supported exclusively by our members, which are the different service providers in the investment fund industry, respectively the funds itself. So we do not get any subsidy from the government here in Luxembourg. We have more than 1,500 members nowadays. And we are, in fact, the representative body for the Luxembourg investment fund community that is composed of Luxembourg domiciled investment funds, asset managers, and management companies, service providers, and associate members based in also other jurisdictions. So what is the objective of the association? Objective is fourfold. First of all, so together with our members, we shape regulation. Together again with our members, we promote the Luxembourg investment fund industry, and we try to best sell Luxembourg as a center of competence for setting up and the administration of investment funds. We help our members capitalize on industry trends, and we foster dedication to professional standards, integrity, and quality. So what does the investment fund industry represent? Let me first start with a slide on the world situation. Here on this slide, so you see the various actors in the investment fund industry. You will very quickly identify that the United States, with 47.7%, is by far the biggest player in the industry. Globally, so the industry represents 51,155 billion euros as of 30th of September 2019. And out of in the whole industry, so Europe represents a total of 23.6% and Luxembourg 8.9%. If I drill it down to Europe, so in Europe, Luxembourg is the absolute leader in terms of assets and administration. So Luxembourg, as of the 30th of September 2019, had 4,569 billion euros under administration. The next most fierce competitor to Luxembourg is, of course, Ireland, followed by Germany, France, United Kingdom, and so on. So these are the latest figures as of the 31st of December 2019, were published, by the way, and you can also retrieve these figures on the website of the CSSF, where CSSF on 31st of December listed a total of 3,746 investment funds, represented by 14,808 fund units, corresponding to, roughly speaking, 4,780 billion euros in terms of assets. If I take the latest figures published by the CSSF on their website, so end of April, we have, roughly speaking, 3,693 investment funds in Luxembourg active, representing a total of 4,403.68 billion euros in terms of assets. So a drop down of roughly speaking 7% compared to the December figures, what is quite normal with the pandemic COVID-19 situation or crisis that we all live through. So these funds, the Luxembourg investment funds, they are of course so invested according to what I call a specific investment policy. So you find here in Luxembourg all type of funds: equity funds, bond funds, balanced funds, money market funds and cash funds, fund of funds, and then all the alternative structures, so real estate funds, venture capital funds, private equity, hedge funds. So here's a little bit to the attributions to per type of investment policy. The Luxembourg fund industry has a very comprehensive ecosystem, and it works thanks to this ecosystem. So you probably know that all these funds are regulated, so meaning they are all supervised by CSSF. All funds here in Luxembourg need to have what I call a auditor. Most of them and have also what I call an outside lawyer for setting up of the fund and for the preparation of the legal documents. We have 141 what I call central administrative agencies in Luxembourg, being mainly banks which are active in keeping the accounts and calculating NAVs. 61 custodian banks here in Luxembourg, as Robert said before, so the funds need to have legally wise so a custodian bank, and these are typically Luxembourg and other foreign banks which settle down here in Luxembourg, particularly in order to offer the service to investment funds that offer this. Most of the funds and the share classes are listed on the Luxembourg Stock Exchange. We have 279 other financial sector professionals which are active in the industry. All these funds are distributed by either private banks, life insurance companies, platforms, distributor platforms, and we have more than 360 management companies, including third-party management companies active here in Luxembourg. On this slide, I show you so that 80% of the top 30 asset managers use Luxembourg investment funds as their primary European platform for distribution. So if you have a look on this slide, you see all the big names: Allianz, BlackRock, HSBC, Nomura, ING, Schroders, UBS, and so on. They all have their funds here in Luxembourg, and they are all, of course, administered and held under custody here in Luxembourg. Robert already made an allusion to the cross-border distribution of these funds. Of course, these funds, Luxembourg investment funds, are not exclusively distributed to the 550 or 600,000 inhabitants in Luxembourg, but these funds are best cross-border distributed. And if I take as an example, take for example Hong Kong, you see Hong Kong is a figure of 81%. That means that 81% of all foreign distributed funds in Hong Kong are Luxembourg investment funds. The same, for example, if you go to Vietnam, for example, nowadays 100% of all foreign funds, so non-Vietnamese local funds distributed in Vietnam are Luxembourg-based investment funds. So this again proves of the attractiveness of the product, and that means that if you have a look on the world map, so we are distributing not only in the Asian region, but we are distributing across the globe our investment funds. Yeah, what are these type of structures, fund structures that we are best distributing? For those of you who are somehow active in the investment funds industry, you may know that in fact we started, as Alex explained before, so I'm in that industry almost since the beginning, since the launch. We started in more or less 40 years ago with UCITS funds here in Luxembourg. UCITS, as most of you know, stands for Undertakes for Collecting Investment Funds and Securities. Then in 2013 came into the game what we call the Alternative Investment Funds Investment Fund Manager Directive, under which so nowadays are being launched to the private equity, real estate, and the hedge funds. And now the third type of structures that we intend and best to sell and that we also achieve the best to set up in Luxembourg are sustainable or responsible investing funds. Yeah, before I close my presentation, a brief word on digital fintech. Of course, so an association like ours that represents such a huge industry is somehow also influenced by digital fintech developments. Not later than in 2016, ALFI decided to create what I call the ALFI Digital Fintech Forum. And the objective of the Digital Fintech Forum is first of all also to follow all the disruptive impacts that digital fintech may have on the asset management industry, and also to identify so in the value chain the processes that we could eventually digitalize. So objectives primarily, first of all, building and spreading a digital fintech know-how within our industry, and this by writing white papers, by sharing digitalization initiatives and case studies to be addressed to industry pain points with digital fintech solutions. We regularly, by the way, cover also some digital fintech topics on our conferences and roadshows abroad. And secondary is contributes to create a strong and innovative ICT ecosystem in Luxembourg, and of course supports the positioning of Luxembourg as an innovative asset management center. And that's already my last one. So this one shows you in fact the structures, the ways that in fact the ALFI Digital Fintech Forum nowadays is being managed. So we have on the lighter green boxes, we have the digital funding, blockchain, crypto assets, cybersecurity working groups, which are more concentrating on doing a deep analysis, on writing white papers, on answering to specific, let's say, consultations that are being issued either by the European Commission or ESMA. To give you as an example, so cybersecurity working group only recently started back in October last year, and in that one, in the next or in the forthcoming, let's say, weeks, we intend to come out with what I call a best market practice on cybersecurity. So what do actors, industry actors in the fund industry need to know and to be aware of in the context of cybersecurity. So reach out to the ALFI website in the next couple of weeks if you will see some of the documents that will be published on that one. Recently, we created, in fact, the three dark green working groups: fund distribution and TA, fund governance and risk management, and fund administration and custody. These are more process digitalization working groups, meaning in these working groups, we try first of all to identify what are the initiatives in the industry with startups that might eventually impact, let's say, the activity on fund distribution or TA, or fund governance and risk management, respectively fund administration and custody. A last word on these groups. So in all, we have more than 120 active members and non-members, non-members being in fact the fintech startups that together with us are active in these working groups. We regularly meet, of course, nowadays not physically, but also nowadays digitally. And as I've said, so we are very active respectively on each of our roadshows and conferences. We try also so to elaborate on digital fintech topics respectively, together with also our partner associations abroad. We try to bring their local digital fintech organizations onto our agendas. We zoom that together so we develop our subjects. That's it for my part.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, François. I mean, ALFI has been very active in the fintech sphere in Luxembourg. You are always welcoming fintechs for your amazing conferences and try to connect them with the financial industry. My question to you before I start the presentation about the LHoFT, is there any business to do in Luxembourg for fintechs?
Definitely, Alex. I think if you're not, let's say, the first one to answer such a question, then I must say I'm regularly contacted by startups from abroad. I recently had a startup from China on Zoom who contacted me, and this thanks to a content that had been made by our chairlady, by Corinne Lamesh, who met the other day in Paris, in fact, a lady that's deeply involved in the French fintech scene. And these people, they are very active in the governance of investment funds, local investment funds, and they wondered how far it might be of interest to come and have a look on what are we doing in this field. What I always can recommend to these companies is that they definitely should not hesitate contacting us, respectively. They should definitely come to Luxembourg, visit us, and together we should elaborate on the topics, respectively on the facilities that they would like to develop. I invited that guys recently to come to one of our next roadshows. We will be present in Asia, as you can imagine, again, beginning of next year, if, of course, COVID-19 pandemic is under control. Otherwise, I told him, listen, I'm more than happy to take you on one of our next upcoming events on the agenda, and together with him, so we could explore some common grounds and decide on would it make sense for him to come physically once to Luxembourg and eventually to create a structure here in Luxembourg or become perhaps a member of LHoFT.
So perfect. So you are the
briefly to answer that question.
Yes, go ahead, Robert.
So Luxembourg, of course, is a great place to live, but for fintechs, it's also a great place to do business. As I think François and myself have explained, it's a B2B place for fintechs. B2C, of course, it's possible when people do that, but it's a B2B place. And I think the best way to explain it is this fund industry is a huge, complex international value chain. So that means if you're a fintech doing IT, doing AML, doing KYC, doing compliance or anything similar, Luxembourg offers you a platform. And the best example is a fintech, which I'm not going to mention, but it's set up in Luxembourg, and their first client after they managed to release their product was a huge global American bank. So of course it was difficult to onboard, but that immediately catapulted them up onto another value. And then their second client was a huge Swiss bank. 6 months later, they're in the top 50 fintechs in the world, because if you manage to get those big State Streets or UBSs or something like that onto your client base, that's what Luxembourg can offer. It's a small country with a huge client base for fintechs.
Yeah, we'll get back to State Street in 6 minutes. Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Francois, for your insights. So I'm going to talk very briefly about the LHoFT. So the LHoFT is the Luxembourg House of Financial Technologies. So we are a foundation, if you want, not for profit. And we are kind of a hybrid. We like hybrids in Luxembourg. We are a public-private partnership between the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Economy, the Chamber of Commerce, Luxembourg for Finance. We initiated the LHoFT to start with 20 plus private partners, meaning the banks, the asset managers, and the law firms, as you can see, and the big audit companies we have here in Luxembourg. And our main mission is, all together with the fintechs we have in Luxembourg, foster innovation in the financial industry. So today, this is the fintech map, and I already apologize to Manon, my colleague, who is maybe online, because I should have put the last one. So this is quite, some updated map. So we have more than 220 fintechs today in Luxembourg. They employ more than 4,000 employees, and they generate a revenue of more than $500 million. And they raised quite some capital last year, more than 100 millions. As you can see, this map is really representing Luxembourg. We have the payments side, as Rob mentioned earlier, but we have a huge fintech, regtech, and blockchain ecosystem. And all those businesses, most of them at least, they are B2B businesses providing services to the financial industry in Luxembourg. And most of them, they choose Luxembourg for the European headquarters, because most of them are coming from outside Luxembourg. So why those fintechs are choosing Luxembourg? Rob already explained, and Francois too. So we are a huge financial industry. First of all, that's where they're gonna find their clients. But also the legal aspect, Rob also mentioned this passporting license. We're gonna discuss about that maybe in the Q&A. The highly qualified people, and also the infrastructure they will find here in Luxembourg. So as you can see, most of the big players in the world, when they choose Europe, usually they choose Luxembourg as the hub to serve. What you will find in Luxembourg is quite unique. It's a full ecosystem, a value chain that provides you support from the public initiatives as the LHoFT, be it the Ministry of Economy. There is more than 15 incubators in Luxembourg, not just focusing on fintechs. We are one of the main ones. But just to give you how much support we give to startups in Luxembourg. You've got private initiatives, private incubators, and then we have a huge chunk of help regarding financing. That can be some VCs, but we also have the Luxembourg Fund, European Investment Fund here in Luxembourg, and there is the Luxembourg Future Fund. So it's a 150 million fund. We can answer the question later, because I can already see some of them popping up in your mind. That will invest not directly into fintechs. If you raise money, let's say you raise 1 million euros and you decide to do business in Europe and you choose Luxembourg, the European Investment Fund will match the funding part. So instead of raising 1 million, you will raise 2 million. But we can explain further down the road how it's working. You also have a huge research and development ecosystem. We have a university, we have research centers. So you're going to have PhDs, you're going to have funding. This is the perfect place for fintechs. Regarding the LHoFT, so we do incubation. Today we incubate 74 companies. We have also non-incubated members. They are based from Tokyo to San Francisco. More than 150 fintechs from all over the world who are using the LHoFT as a connector to the financial industry in Luxembourg, but also in Europe. And so far, for the last 3 years, we supported almost 800 fintechs connect with the local industry. And most of our ecosystem is, as I mentioned, payment, regtech, fintech, and blockchain. On the incubation side, we have 14 closed offices. So this provides the best security possible if you are regulated. We provide fixed desks, so you can domicile, have your address here at the loft. And we also have this flexibility of hot desking. So you come and go as you wish. It's a beautiful place. most of our partners and our fintechs are very happy to come work. Now, due to COVID, we were a bit more empty, but it's a fun place to be. We do acceleration program. We've done acceleration program for young startups, for I would say scale-up startups, and we also driving a special program for financial inclusion. This is the last one we've run for fintechs from Africa. So that's it. We are a community, as I said. That's where people come together to have fun, but also to do business. So I will be happy to answer all your questions after the presentation. Yes, we also connect you with the universities. We have worked with more than 15 universities in Europe. And if you have kids, we also have special programs for kids. So we take care of them. We connect you with the whole world. We work today with more than 20 hubs, again, from Tokyo to San Francisco. So if you are looking to Europe, we connect you with 15 hubs in Europe. So if one day you want to do business in Spain, in France, in Italy, in Denmark, we can connect you with the right people over there. So you can also develop your business. So that's it for me. I was quite brief because I want to hear more from, how do I stop my share screen? It's done? Do you see me?
Yes.
Perfect, good, thank you. So Nicolas.
Thank you, Alex. So I'm Nicolas Jarre. I work for State Street in Luxembourg. State Street is one of the leading asset servicer in the world. So we provide custody, fund admin, and transfer agency for a broad portfolio of clients. So typically institutional clients and investment funds, if you want. In Luxembourg, we are very well positioned as a leading custodian and fund administrator. I wanted to talk about a few use cases of how we interact with a fintech. Okay, so this one is very, very schematic. It's to show you the different steps, basically, of our collaboration with a fintech. And my main message, basically, is you do not have, and we do not have, basically, to sign a contract and effectively work together to provide each other with benefits. Okay, so we have the discovery phase. Okay, you will usually, a fintech will usually come and give us a demo of their tool. Okay, we will define on that basis if there's interest, if there are common use cases we can work on where you can help us. We'll typically run a proof of concept, okay, and detail a minimum viable product on which we can start. Okay, after that, if we have a common interest, okay, we'll work on onboarding basically your service. That means there's let's say the formalities, which is discussing financials, legal terms, the governance. Luxembourg, as you can imagine, is quite strict on governance. So we have to make sure we have, sound practices to oversee any service we delegate. We'll then perform the technical onboarding, IT infrastructure, defining the operating model. And then that's where we will implement, the solution. I like to say we'll implement, use and abuse the solution. So that will be good testing and learning grounds for you, okay, to know what are further improvements you can do. We will obviously have to demonstrate benefit to each other, to our senior management as well. And hopefully we'll repeat for additional use cases. So we can always start small, but aim big and have an iterative approach. So key message is it doesn't have to go all the way through the 8 steps basically to be valuable for each other. And I will evidence that in a minute. So yeah, I'll describe three use cases which are based on real life, okay? But it's really a good description of what can happen. The first one is a successful onboarding. And I've got 2 cases in mind, very positive for us. One is a reconciliation solution. The other one is, and I think we have people from that company on the line. The other one is really the production and the distribution of UCITS kit and PRIPS kit, so with Sequoia. Those two solutions, basically, we worked together, we worked jointly, basically, to reach a stage where the solution was beneficial for us, for State Street, okay? So that means we went through different cases, we went through the details of the regulation, we went through the details of the reconciliation requirements, okay? And we defined and onboarding a first set of solution, a first set of service that, you know, allowed us basically to solve a problem. The problem may be some task we cannot do. The problem may be some task we can do, but with far too much pain. Or the problem may be on our client side, so the funds, okay? How can we solution things for them? So by having this level of collaboration, which in Luxembourg, to be honest, and to come back to Robert's point, is extremely easy due to the size of the country, due to the multicultural aspect of the country, and due to the presence of, you know, facilitators like the LHoFT, who can basically create the links between fintechs and banks. So due to this collaboration, we managed to quickly arrive to a solution that is scalable on both sides of the equation. So in the case of the reconciliation solution, we onboarded one use case for Luxembourg. Very quickly, we also saw that our other affiliated companies in Europe had similar needs, not exactly the same, but similar needs. So there was a rapid expansion of the collaboration. Very similar with Sequoia. We are currently, you know, we're always looking at ways to improve basically the service and ways to expand and basically go beyond the actual level of service, beyond the actual templates that are provided. So we currently very open to working with our partners basically to define, you know, the requirements and help them develop a solution that will help us and will help our clients down the line. Very obviously, if we manage to work together and, as we say, put pen on paper, the benefit for the fintech, it's a platform for growth. You know, we give State Street, we give access to a very significant portfolio of clients. Okay, we give access to a very, very high volume and also a very large breadth of service. The benefit for State Street, obviously, we have access to a faster development cycle. We have immediate scalability of the solution. The fintech partner can provide it. And that's specifically true, in what we would consider as non-core processes. So what is non-core for us, where we may not have the full focus of the organization, that's where you can typically help us, okay? A second use case which I want to present is when we do not manage to reach, you know, a contract. So after the proof of concept, the use case is the usage of artificial intelligence to extract data from fund documentation. We did pretty detailed proof of concept, and we reached a common agreement that the solution was not yet there for us. Obviously, there's direct benefit for the fintech. It's better understanding of the market needs. They also identify some room for improvement. For State Street, it's also, you know, invaluable insight into, you know, the technologies which are maybe not sufficiently mature to onboard on a given problem statement, but we at least know the direction of travel and we can assess basically the future, you know, product possibilities or process possibilities we can have using a given fintech. And finally, you know, very briefly, there are use cases of fintechs where very quickly we realize we don't have, you know, our needs do not meet, okay? We do not have the same target. So there's no room basically to onboard that fintech, but the solution may be very relevant for our clients. And that's where there is room basically for collaboration, whether in, you know, directly, you know, direct interest, direct collaboration, or very informal collaboration to introduce people to each other. The benefit for the fintech, again, it's a huge platform for growth, access to a big portfolio of clients. access to knowledge, because through our clients, we also, have at State Street a huge level of knowledge on the needs across the industry. The benefit for State Street is, again, not direct, but it's also what I call the highway to future products and solutions. Again, we get to, be part of those discussions around the needs, the problem statements, and the direction of travel of the industry. We can also immediately, cover some client needs where we may not have the solution in-house, but we can, in a very informal way, or maybe formally, go through introduction and explain basically the rationale for two sides of the equation. So really a very dynamic and very collaborative environment in Luxembourg. Usually huge thanks to the LHoFT for facilitating that. So Alex, back over to you, or Anthony.
Thank you, Nicolas, very kind of you. But you have been very active too, because it's not just us introducing Fintechs, you will have to do the follow-up with them. So a few questions, because Nicolas, if I want to work with State Street, so we had different kind of entrepreneurs. Sometimes it's just two crazy guys in the garage saying, I want to work with State Street. And then I'm trying maybe not to put them already in contact with you, just with an idea. What's the level of maturity you are looking regarding the Fintechs or the project? So
it's a very good question, and the dilemma we have. Okay, State Street is a bank, it's a custodian bank, it's a depository. We are in charge of our clients' assets, we are responsible for the assets, but we are also responsible for their data. So the first question, or the first requirement, is to have a very solid data protection process or procedure. It's very quickly going to be a no-go and a showstopper if we cannot demonstrate that our clients' data and that our data is secure with our fintech partner. The second thing is to try, and that's very obvious in commercial, in commercial science or in marketing, but really focus on the problem statement. The problem statement from our perspective. And our perspective, in this case, we are an asset servicer. We are not the asset manager. So if as much as possible, a fintech that comes with a business case, with a use case very well described and very easy to understand, this business case will help us also sell basically the solution to our stakeholders internally. So empathy and security.
Mauro, thank you for your question. It just dropped a question. In the selection of the fintechs to work with, Nicolas, are you giving priority to the ones based in Luxembourg, or are you just based on quality?
Is it a trap, Alex? No, there's no priority to Luxembourg. No, quality first. Quality first.
If I can jump in as well, that's always something that we sell as Luxembourg. Of course, we're happy if people come to Luxembourg, but what we really care about is that our financial center remains competitive. And if we have a fintech that can sell their products to financial institutions in Luxembourg, thereby making them more efficient, that's great for Luxembourg, that's great for the industry, no matter where you're based, as long as it's allowed. So i.e. maybe you need to be regulated, maybe you don't, but as long as it's legal and compliant, no matter where you are, that's fine for the industry in general. And if you do need a place in Luxembourg, the LHoFT is usually the best place to get started.
Thank you, Rob. Very nice. François, do you want to add something? Are you giving priority, or when companies are contacting you, François?
Yeah, in fact, so yeah.
What's your selection process?
As Gerard and Robert said, I think it's more about the attractiveness of the solutions and in fact the startup would like to develop here in Luxembourg. I can tell you, so we've been in touch with not only companies now in the Asia region. You probably remember back in September last year, there was a large mission going to Israel, where in fact so we had deeper discussions with Israeli startups, which are very, very much advanced in cybersecurity topics. And I can tell you, so in that context, so I know that there's one or the other of our existing members who is regularly in talks with such type of companies in order to come along and produce them so tools that would really keep them on the safe side in the context of cybersecurity. Sorry, my phone is ringing.
They already want you to introduce
them. So that's one point. The other point that I wanted to make is, as I said, so as an association, so we are regularly traveling around the globe. So we are going to what we call our famous roadshows in all areas of the world, and in these various cities that we show up. So we regularly have nowadays also questions on digital fintech developments here in Luxembourg, and the interest is huge. So there are a lot of contenders in the world who heard and who read about the developments that we are doing here in Luxembourg in that context, and who wonder, because of the huge platforms that we have, as Robert said, so as well on in the investment fund industry, as on the asset management side, in the insurance business as well. So there is a huge potential for such type of startups who have really a good product in mind or good solution in mind, so to come settle down and try to best sell the products to the actors in the industry. A last point that I wanted to make, of course, you can imagine that there are regularly such type of foreign startups who contact us at ALFI saying, listen guys, I want to come to Luxembourg and I want to introduce myself. Can you make sure that I have the right audience? Can you gather people? And what I do systematically at that time is that as an association held by its members, I cannot favorize one member to another one, respectively one of the contacts to another one. But what I recommend also these people is, if next time so you are around and we have one of our large conferences, for example, in Luxembourg, I offer them a ticket for free. I invite them to come participate in that event. Take as an example now the next Global Distribution Conference in September, which unfortunately this year won't take place physically, but we are working on a digital event. But suppose that the event would have taken place, we would probably again have gathered, roughly speaking, 600 people in the sort of Conférence Européenne. And in that place, so I invite these people to come along and spend the 2 days with us, distribute their business cards, listen to our topics, exchange ideas. And it is through that means that such people get confident in eventually thinking about, okay, should I go now a step further? Should I now settle down in Luxembourg? And if you want to settle down in Luxembourg, if you do not want to spend immediately the means to go for a big structure, start with a small structure, respectively, eventually tries to come through LHoFT and get a first, let's say, foot into the door.
Thank you, Francois. Can you just remind us, when is the event in September?
In September, so the huge conference was planned from the 15th to the 17th of September. Mm-hmm. In fact, what we intend now to do is, so as the event will not take place physically this year, we are working on a digital event, a video conference, that will most probably, but it's not yet, let's say, official, but I can tell this audience that we are working on this. It's an event that we'll organize all over the week of 15th of September. So meaning we'll come out with a number of plenary sessions and with a number of other topics that we would like to develop, where either we organize them on the format of panels, or we go ahead and we record these ones, some of them, and we put them at the disposal of the audience, either first of all to follow live, respectively in a second stage to retrieve them from YouTube or from Twitter or LinkedIn, wherever we will publish them. In fact.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We'll keep people updated on that.
Okay.
Quick question. You mentioned about setting up the business. So I'm going to just ask Hugo, who is working for Finimo, one of our accounting partners. Hugo, how much it costs to set up a business in Luxembourg? How long it takes?
Wow. Very complicated question. Thanks for asking that. It really depends on the type of businesses, the type of company. So basically, if it's let's say simple commercial company, it's quite straightforward. So it's a matter of weeks to get the company up and running, and the cost it's roughly let's say between 5 and 10k euros, depending on the legal advisor you may use, and it's also include the notary fee for the incorporation, etc. I would like to draw your attention on the fact that the main bottleneck of this process is the bank opening process, the bank account opening process. So as long as the bank account is open, the incorporation itself is a matter of days.
Perfect. We work with many banks in Luxembourg, so we can also facilitate that. Maybe, yes, just before giving the mic to Suzanne in 1 second, if you don't mind. A question to you, because you mentioned what kind of legal entity, and that's a question more for Nicolas and Francois. We have some companies asking us if they need to be PSF to serve the financial sector and to work with the asset management in Luxembourg. What's your intake, guys, on that? So just explain PSF, what it is, and
okay. So who wants to start? You want to start, Robert?
All right, I'll start very generally.
I'll leave it to youngster. Go ahead.
I will start. So in Luxembourg, many fintechs have to be regulated to a certain extent under something we like to call PSF. It basically means a professional of the financial sector. And I have kind of like an idiot test. It's basically, do you touch confidential data? Yes or no? And if you do, most likely you will have to have some kind of regulation, meaning that you understand how to handle the data, meaning that the data is stored safely, etc. But because of the number of financial institutions in Luxembourg, even I would say a cleaning lady or an organization that provides cleaning services, they move around the office, they see confidential data, even those need to be regulated as a type of professional of the financial sector. So many fintechs do, unless you're a pure software provider that doesn't actually see the data. But it's nothing to be scared of. And in fact, the PSF kind of is a label of quality. It means that you have your risk management and your compliance and your operations a bit under control. That's how we like to see it in Luxembourg.
So yeah, what's the need to have this let's say license, if I may say?
Let me perhaps complete Robert by saying, I think particularly in the investment fund industry, it's always a question of credibility. So meaning if you come to an industry like that one that's extremely regulated here in Luxembourg, where all the service providers are regulated structures, are controlled by the Luxembourg controlling authority, CSSF, it would in a certain sense also make sense, let's say, whatever the type of activities that you offer that would be regulated, that you would be controlled. If I take as a recent topic that a lot of asset managers debated in Luxembourg, which was the use of virtual assets. You remember probably the ones here in this webinar, so who regularly go onto the CSSF website. They recently published a new circular on virtual assets service providers that needs to get their authorization before being active, let's say, so to deal in such products and respectively keep such products, let's say, under custody. So that's typically an activity that needs to be somehow controlled, because what we shouldn't forget all about is that if you hold all these assets, virtual assets, on behalf of investment funds, which themselves are invested by, let's say, retail, high net worth individual or institutional investors, we all should have one common aim, which is in fact the safeguard, let's say, the investor's interests. And safeguarding the investor's interest goes in line with playing an open card, making sure so that we have really the situation under control, and on a regularly basis proves that that's really the case by letting a regulator in, and by giving the regulator, let's say, the proof that we work according to the rules.
Thank you. Nicolas, what's your intake? How do you see?
Oh, exactly the same. So it really depends on the type of activity which the fintech will support us on. If the activity is regulated and if the data is accessible to the fintech, then it is preferable to have the PSF status. But otherwise, it's not required. It's always easier because it facilitates basically our governance and the level of oversight and due diligence we have to perform on the fintech. But it is not a must-have. Again, depending on the type of activity and the regulation.
Perfect. Thank you for your feedback. It's a question that we have quite often. I'm gonna just give the mic to Suzanne, because Suzanne is working with Sequoia, the one you mentioned, Nicolas, and maybe she can give us a feedback how it is to to be a fintech in Luxembourg and work with the financial industry. Suzanne, are you with us?
Yes, yeah, can you hear
Go
me?
ahead, Suzanne. Yes,
Yeah,
loud and
hi
clear.
there. I was just offering a bit of a testimony from the other side, let's say. So Sequoia is a fintech, even though we're not the smallest fintech anymore. And we're already working with some large financial institutions in Luxembourg and Europe-wide. But really, what I see as the big advantage of Luxembourg is that proximity. So we're a member of ALFI as well. I'm participating in some of the working groups that Francois has mentioned. We're a member of the LHoFT. We're speaking to clients and to other members of the finance community to really, number one, understand the market, see what's happening, see the direction that certain things are going, be it regulation, be it the legal situation, be it the clients, right? The client needs. And this is extremely useful, especially because there's a big spirit of collaboration in Luxembourg, so that it is much easier than in other places to get feedback, to present an idea to somebody from the industry and then get honest feedback saying, well, that's good, that's not good. It's it's beside the point. It's beside the point for us, but maybe another client type would like this. And I think that's quite unique in Luxembourg, really.
Thank you, Suzanne. Can I be a devil advocate? If you have to not maybe mention
yes.
Problem, but if you have an advice to give to one entrepreneur coming to Luxembourg and working with the financial institute, what would it be?
I would say to have very, very open ears. So to be humble rather than, come and do the big sales presentation, let's say. The presentation, yes, it may be sales, but be there to actually make an exchange. And for this, you have to be open to hear what the other side says, especially if it's something that you don't really want to hear, right? So that is important. And then, then offer also your services. So work on something, say, okay, what can we do to show what we're doing, to understand? That would be probably my first advice.
Thank you, Suzanne. So I'm going to ask that to everybody just to wrap up, starting with Rob, an advice, then Nicolas, and then Francois. Rob?
Jump in on the collaboration aspect, but an advice I would give to fintech, if you want to do business in Luxembourg, get connected to the LHoFT. You don't need to live at the LHoFT. You don't need to be a regular there, but the LHoFT has created a community in Luxembourg which is second to none. And like Suzanne was saying, a community that works together. And I think that's because of the fact of how our financial center is. It's international. If you remember that map I showed at the beginning, people in Luxembourg tend to work together because their clients are actually somewhere else. Nicolas' clients from State Street might be in the US, but that doesn't mean that the Nomura bank who's got clients in Japan, that they don't actually have the same problem. So often people find in Luxembourg that they have the same problem internationally, and the LHoFT helps people meet, helps people find solutions. And I think that's the one big game changer that's happened in the past 4 years, is that the LHoFT has really brought the industry together and pushed it into a similar direction.
Thank you, Rob. I owe you lunch now. Thank you for that. Nicolas?
Very difficult one. The biggest advice, yes, it's really along the same line. Be connected, make sure you know the regulation, or you get to grips with the regulation and what activities are more regulated than others. It doesn't mean they are less appealing. They may be more appealing, but it drives the requirements, and it drives basically the need for solutions.
Thank you. Francois, last word.
Yeah, so what we as an association, we always tell startups that we meet in the world is to say, listen guys, Luxembourg is right now well positioned on the map in the investment fund industry. Our ambition, of course, is to continue growing, continue attracting new funds and new structures, complex products to Luxembourg. It's not always exclusive about regulation and new regulations that will allow us to grow, but it's also about efficiency. And efficiency in our eyes goes hand in hand with new developments, new out-of-the-box ideas, and these out-of-the-box ideas definitely come from startups, and therefore, so it's a place to be in our eyes.
Thank you, Francois, and I return all the compliments, because I mean, once we have fintechs come in, we connect with you guys, and then the business is done. You facilitate our business. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your experience. I'll just give the mic to Anthony to wrap up and maybe mention the next activity we will have, Anthony.
Of course, it's been a pleasure to have all of you on board for this webinar, including all the participants. So I just want to show you briefly what is coming up in the next weeks until July 17th. As Alex has mentioned, we are covering the whole industry in Luxembourg. On June 24th, it's going to be a showcase on the payment industry in Luxembourg. Tomorrow, if you are a fan of blockchain, we are going to host Caroline Malcolm, the global head of blockchain of the OECD. June 25th, we are going to share with you how we are working together with Israel and vice versa. Yael, hello, she's on the call as well.
Awesome ecosystem. Francois mentioned it. Amazing work our LTIO is doing there. Thank you so much, Yael.
And then we're going to host another fantastic speaker, Vice President of Santander, on the impact of COVID-19 on the wealth management industry. And then June 30th, we are going to have a showcase on the banking industry in Luxembourg, following up with a showcase on the insurance industry on July 17th. And we are going to finish off this wonderful series with a showcase and an overview on the blockchain industry on July 14th. Thank you very much. And the ball is back to you, Alex.
Thank you so much. So yes, all this information is on our website, LHoFT.com. We'll share it in the chat, Anthony, please. And then yes, please join us for our next session. It's going to be on the payment. We will have the CSSF, the Luxembourg regulator. We'll answer all your questions, and we will have Luxembourg Finance will also be back to explain the banking industry, joined with ABBL, the banking association, will also be with us for the banking. So guys, thank you so much for your time. Quick question, can we share the slides? Yes? Perfect. Yes. We'll do that, and we'll send you to the ones who are participating in this webinar, all the slides that have been showcased today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.